This video helps the independent contract recruiters to understand the overall business operating expenses difference between traditional staffing companies and cloud big data. Why cloud big data pay 40% maximum 40% recurring income. Cloud Big Data takes care of all onshore and offshore business operating costs, overhead and expenses to successfully operate the e-staffing business in United States and India. Hence Cloud Big Data pay 40% of the vendor margin as recurring income to independent contract recruiters. As per the staffing industry experts' analysis, Cloud Big Data's 40% recurring income is considered to be first time ever, highest commission in the staffing industry. Overall business operating expenses. Cloud Big Data versus traditional staffing companies, expenses and gross profit. Traditional staffing companies' expenses and gross profit. Cloud Big Data expenses and gross profit. Business operating expenses. For traditional companies is 45%. For Cloud Big Data is 45%. Staffing expenses. For traditional companies is 25%. For Cloud Big Data is 40%. Total expenses. For traditional companies is 70%. For Cloud Big Data is 85%. Gross profit. For traditional companies is 30%. For Cloud Big Data is 15%. Overall expenses of traditional staffing companies. Overhead and operating business expenses, 45%, staffing expenses, 25%. Gross profit, 30%. Staffing expenses of traditional companies. Expenses of business development executive salaries for developing new clients, 5%. Expenses of account managers' salaries for acquiring requirements and client support, 5%. Expenses of recruiters' salaries for sourcing, screening and recruiting, 12%. Expenses of job boards, 3%. Overall expenses of traditional staffing companies. 5% plus 5% plus 12% plus 3% equals 25%. Overall expenses of Cloud Big Data. Overhead and operating business expenses, 45%. Profit sharing to independent contract recruiter, 40%. Gross profit, 15%. Traditional staffing companies' total recruitment expenses is just 25% only. While Cloud Big Data's total recruitment expenses is 40%. Traditional staffing companies' gross profit is 30%. Cloud Big Data's gross profit is 15% only. Why Cloud Big Data can only pay maximum 40% recurring income? Cloud Big Data takes care of onshore business expenses. Payroll administration expenses. H-1B transfer expenses. Legal immigration expenses. United States taxation expenses. External legal and audit expenses. Expenses for liability insurances in United States, commercial general liability insurance, automobile liability insurance, umbrella liability insurance, workers' compensation and employers' liability insurance, professional liability insurance, third-party fidelity bond insurance. Contract management expenses. Account receivables expenses. Account payables expenses. Invoicing and billing expenses. Office rents, equipment, supplies, maintenance expenses. Technology infrastructure expenses. Technical support expenses. Advertising, promotion, training expenses. Cloud Big Data takes care of offshore business expenses. ICR application processing and support expenses. ICR payroll administration expenses. Office rents, equipment, supplies, maintenance expenses. India taxation expenses. Important recommendations to independent contract recruiters. Since Cloud Big Data pays 40% of the corp-to-corp vendor margin as recurring income, so every independent contract recruiters will get their own client requirements and source the consultants on their own. Since Cloud Big Data paying 40% of the corp-to-corp vendor margin as recurring income, every independent contract recruiters need to fulfill multiple roles and responsibilities, such as a recruiter, business development specialist and account manager to get your own client requirements, consultants, and achieve placements. Do not submit your candidates to VMS portal requirements because those independent contract recruiters who posted their own requirements already put margin to Cloud Big Data on those requirements. If you again work on those, it will be like a double margin. At Cloud Big Data, you can either work on your own client requirements, or you can market and place your own hot list consultants, or you can do both. Any approach is fine, but finally achieving a placement is important. If you do not have own client, or vendor contacts, then you can focus on marketing and placing your own hot list consultants.